Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our Talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now to a poem, Washington's Monument, February 1885. Notice that February here is completely spelled out, not as in the Lincoln poem that we studied recently. This is poem 25 of the 58 of Sands at 70. And I just want to point out, I mean, to me this is kind of remarkable how laid out in the deathbed edition here in Sands at 70, you will have three great Americans mentioned in order. Notice first we'll have Grant, then we'll have a poem about Red Jacket, an Iroquois, great Iroquois chieftain, and then finally we will have Washington and a tribute to the Washington Monument. Now our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Talks with Walt, and that you were there from the very beginning with our inscriptions work all the way up to and including a set of introductory comments to Sands at 70, and as I said, we just finished with poems over Grant and Red Jacket. Now, our first observations here from our Nortons are that this poem was first published in the Philadelphia Press, February 22nd, 1855, under the title, Ah, Not This Granite Dead and Cold. Obviously, the monument itself versus the man, if you will. Let's enjoy the construction of, he starts with Ah, not, and then he'll say what it is that is greatest about Washington. Now again, I've commented to you guys, if we are not patriots as young people, it isn't your fault. You're not born a patriot like the color of your eyes. You got to choose that. And if you haven't chosen to be a patriot, a huge part of the reason for that is the mistakes and the flaws of people of my generation and earlier that hasn't given you the reason to be a patriot. And here, reading Leaves of Grass, here, notice, Whitman's going to give us reasons to be patriots. He's going to say, look, in spite of the complicated nature of Grant, we ought to respect him. We ought to respect all of the important leaders in America's pantheon, including folks like Red Jacket. And then finally, let's talk about Washington. What makes Washington so special? Here we go. Ah, not this marble, cold and dead, the monument itself. And next time that you're in Washington, D.C., stand in front of the monument and read this poem. It will, I think, have even more special significance. Far from its base and shaft expanding, the round zones circling, comprehending. And then he'll speak directly to Washington. Thou, Washington, art all the world's. Go back to Passage to India now, what we've said about Whitman as the poet of the world. Thou, Washington, art all the world's, the continent's entire, not yours alone, America. Europe's as well in every part, castle of lord, or labor's cot, or frozen north, or sultry south, the Africans, the Arabs in his tent, old Asia's there with venerable smile, seated amid her ruins. Now we've seen this idea that Whitman believes that all of prior history culminates in Washington and in American history. It all was meant to be, as reading of Hegel helped him to get there. Notice that all of old Asia is in ruins. And then in parenthetics, greets the antique hero new, 'tis the same, the heir legitimate, continued ever, the indomitable heart and arm, proofs of the never broken line. In other words, this idea, this Hegelian idea of the march of history. Courage, alertness, patience, faith. Notice it's not 3 but 4 there. The same. Even in defeat, defeated not. The same. And then notice there's the colon, and then there's the in parenthetic. In other words, he's going to make the argument that when you study all of history was gesturing towards the greatest of them all, Washington. And now we'll get to why. Wherever sails a ship, or house is built on land, or day or night, through teeming cities, you'll remember teeming from Eidolons, through teeming cities, and obviously we think about the Lazarus poem, right, that ends up on the Statue of Liberty. Through teeming cities, streets, indoors or out, factories or farms, now or to come or past. I think this may be the origin of those last lines of Yeats' sailing to Byzantium, what is past or passing or to come. Notice it's a nice reworking of this. Now or to come or past, where patriot wills existed or exist. Patriot, interestingly, it's a very rare use in Leaves of Grass. You'll remember it from Europe, the 72nd and 73rd years. Where patriot wills existed or exist, wherever, and now notice capitalized, wherever freedom, poised by toleration, swayed by law, stands or is rising, thy true monument. Well, it's a compelling little poem that says what? Well, Washington can't be somehow captured in marble, dead and cold, but rather Washington is captured in, notice again capitalized, freedom, toleration, law. Those are the three things that for Whitman makes Washington the most important. Therefore, Washington is for all the world, because for all the world, freedom, toleration, and law have to be central. You can't have true democracy without those three elements. At 2b, I love the construction here that he starts with, no. Whitman says, no. Washington can't be understood with marble. It's not that, it is this, that construction. And at 3a, I think that Whitman was very influenced by Emerson's idea. You'll remember that Emerson said in one of his essays, there is probably no history but biography. That idea of the greatest people. Of course, for Emerson, it would have been the greatest men by and large. The greatest people in history are going to determine the outcome of history. And of course, Washington stands, looms, strides powerfully as one of the most important in American thought. But now to own a poem like this at 3b, do you agree that Washington actually deserves this level of praise? There's a lot of debate, of course, today about some of America's greatest leaders and whether they in fact deserve all the respect, the patriotic respect that we give to them. And then finally, do you understand how you are somehow an extrapolation of the great leader and the great thinker and the great doer, Washington? I'm hopeful that your reading and study of Leaves of Grass is leading you towards a more enlightened view of patriotism. Thank you.